Happy Friday, happy weekend eve, and have fun, everyone. Let's get to the program, but there are a couple of topics I'd like to touch on that are very important to me. In this video, after greeting you as always and after giving thanks, which are not just a formality, but truly heartfelt on my part because it's always wonderful to share, I see that the numbers keep growing, and that's entirely thanks to you. Yesterday, Fiorentina, they also missed the chance to get a draw in Mainz because they played a good match for 60 minutes but didn't double their lead. They had gone ahead and then all their limitations came out, psychological, character related. When you're afraid, you get nervous, you can't do what you should, you retreat, you close yourself off, you make mistakes with even the simplest things, and you lose a match that, in my opinion, doesn't even jeopardize advancing among the top 8 in the conference. It makes the problem worse to the point that this morning at 9, Paolo Vanoli showed up at Viola Park, and he will be the one to the training sessions, a couple of practices before Girona Fiorentina, which is a psychologically decisive match, especially for Fiorentina. On Sunday at 3 p.m., Vanoli signed, will sign, or is signing, it depends on when you're watching this video, a contract until June with an option. Tonight we start with Pisa versus Cremonese. In my opinion, Pisa is doing well under Gilardino in terms of their game organization. And they're paying for a somewhat lackluster transfer market and the bad luck they've had with Stengs being injured. But Stengs has a history of injuries. They're still missing something up front. I believe that Gilardino has given Pisa an identity. Cremonese, on the other hand, is on a real roll. But those aren't the topics I want to discuss today. There are two topics I want to touch on today. The greater superior power that's coming for Comolli is the fact that even Spalletti has to rush to his side, so to speak, football-wise, to save him, because no one gives anyone else a break. I mean, since he just got there, I refrained from making any judgments for 2 months, because it seemed right not to judge an executive who had only been there for 2 months. But even after 3 months, I still didn't judge him. Basically, I still haven't judged him. Maybe I've even made some videos taking his side because I distanced myself from those who judged the transfer market in November. Honestly, it seems like a crazy thing to do, crazy in quotes. Everyone can do what they think is right, but then be careful because the results are there for everyone to see. So Spalletti remains the best family doctor, even for, in quotes, the Comolli household, especially in the days when Comolli's own power will have increased. He arrived with a certain role, handled the transfer market, and will have an absolutely primary reference role for the ownership. Whether that's right or wrong, you decide. John Elkann also spoke, at least verbally dismissing all the rumors about wanting to sell Juve in the future. However, Spalletti needs to be Comolli's main supporter because Spalletti has to make up for some things that Comolli did with a very significant outlay. I'm referring to the Jonathan David deal, endorsed and wanted by Comolli and set up by the previous head of the technical area, but it hadn't been finalized. And then in April, Jonathan David said, I've committed myself and I'm waiting for Juve, as you might remember. I even made a video about it. And then he completed the deal between the end of June and the first days of July. It was one of his first moves. Here, Spalletti can step in. He can be Comolli's advocate. But I always think that when you sign someone on a free transfer, even though, in my opinion, there's been a bit too much talk about commissions and salary. Yes, he gets 6 million, but if you sign someone on a free, how much should he get? A pittance. He gets 6 million because Jonathan David, who has scored everywhere, is right to earn 6 million on a free transfer. Then you have to pay the commissions. But despite everything, I don't think Juve will want to throw him away in the coming months. But if it were to happen next summer, for example, I would still bet on him. But you definitely make a capital gain. So in my opinion, this isn't a situation where you absolutely have to rush to the rescue. Always in quotation marks, football-wise, don't get me wrong, of Comolli, because even if things go badly, you still get some money. The two essential moves. The essential move isn't Joao Mario, whom you swapped for Alberto Costa, who, honestly, in hindsight, I wouldn't have let go because from my point of view, Alberto Costa is stronger than Joao Mario. Anyway, he had settled in at Juve with his own characteristics, and I'm convinced he would have become a starter because he had also done well in the last league matches and at the Club World Cup. The power that is steadily increasing, that will increase as everything there is carefully written and clearly defined, passes through Spalletti as a safety net. In my opinion, in two key moves, Openda and Zagrova, who were the most significant market expenditures because either you got them, either you got him, or you have an obligation, a responsibility, and here Comolli can't risk having his plans ruined. The roast was prime meat considering what was spent, and so today Spalletti is Comolli's biggest supporter in Juve's revival. And so, just as his power grows, so does the desire to see that something might finally come together in terms of the money that's been spent. Because when we're talking about 70, 75, 80 million plus the salary, we're talking about a lot of money for a club that was coming off the back of Cop Menes, who, by the way, Spalletti is now bringing back. Then, if we go further back, there's Nico Gonzalez, who found a way to be sold. But if you want, we can go even further back to Douglas Luiz. Well, let's not go back that far, but we could go back to Di Maria, Locatelli in 2021, Pogba, all the money spent like a bottomless pit and with absolute disaster. So maybe Juve will still end up spending more money, but Comolli is betting everything on Spalletti, not just because Spalletti will have to give Comolli this team an identity, and I'm convinced he will, and I'm convinced he'll rack up a lot of points. It's better to talk about it beforehand. For me, Juventus is a squad made for Spalletti and suited to Spalletti. But the decisive step for Comolli, who is gaining more power, will be to save the ship when it comes to the summer signings, especially those two names I mentioned to you. All this while, from my point of view, rightly so, Beppe Marotta, president of Inter, is celebrating the club's first ever positive balance sheet after a period of ups and downs, problems, controversies, and stances taken by a club that has gone through difficult times. In my opinion, they managed to get through it largely thanks to their smart moves with free transfers, and they held firm when many were calling for interventions or measures related to the budget. But they managed to find a way, in my opinion, with sensational free transfers, because when you sign players on a free, you can do it just for the sake of it, but you shouldn't do it just for the sake of it when you're a prestigious and significant club like Inter. So when you sign someone on a free like Mkhitaryan, I remember that Mkhitaryan deal very well. It came out of nowhere, a surprise, when in Rome they were saying he had promised to renew for 2 more years with Roma, but Inter had already secured him. The same goes for Çalhanoğlu, for Thuram, for all those stories that have allowed Inter to now say, for the first time in history, after so many budget holes, after so many years in the red, so many years in the red. This should serve as a warning for the future to achieve important things, to find the appeal that Italian football no longer has, but for many other reasons that, in my opinion, don't really depend on the executives or the club. Especially when Marotta says that once we used to keep the best players, but now we're forced to sell them for budget reasons, and we can only afford someone like Modric, hats off, but only at 40 years old. This too is a key point for me. I'm waiting for your opinions, your judgments, your thoughts, which are always excellent and plentiful. Bye.